At every Walmart in America, on a shelf between the cereal and the checkout line, there's a basketball sneaker for $19.99. It's been sitting on that shelf for over 20 years. And according to the man whose name is on the box, that single shoe has sold more pairs than the LeBron James line, the Kevin Durant line, and the Kyrie Irving line combined. 400 million pairs, roughly $10 billion in cumulative revenue. The athlete who built that empire is Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most dominant basketball players in history. 4 NBA championships, 3 finals MVPs, Hall of Fame. But here's the part that doesn't add up to most people. Shaq didn't build this empire with a premium sneaker. He didn't partner with Nike or Adidas or any of the major players. He did it the one way the entire sneaker industry said was impossible. He made his shoes cheap, and then he sold them next to the peanut butter. The premium sneaker industry spent 40 years building a single ironclad rule. The bigger the athlete, the higher the price tag. Superstars drove prices up because the whole system depended on it. Shaq looked at that rule, looked at the math, and walked away to prove it was wrong. This is the story of how he broke the most expensive rule in the sneaker business, and how 25 years later, he ended up owning the company that made him. To understand why Shaq's move was so radical, you have to understand the system he walked away from. Back in 1985, Nike released the Air Jordan 1, retail price $65. That was expensive for a basketball sneaker at the time, and it was deliberate. The NBA fined Michael Jordan $5,000 every game he wore the wrong colors. Nike paid every fine and turned the controversy into their marketing campaign. The price tag was the point. A sneaker anyone could afford was a sneaker nobody wanted. That philosophy drove the industry for the next 2 decades. By 1996, Reebok was selling Allen Iverson's signature Question for $99.99. That same year, Nike dropped the Penny Hardaway Foamposite at $180, a shoe with a plastic upper that cost roughly a third of that to manufacture. And it sold out anyway. By 2002, the Air Jordan 17 crossed $200 for the first time. The ceiling had tripled in 17 years. This was the sneaker industry's premium arms race. And the math was simple. Higher prices meant higher margins. Higher margins meant bigger marketing budgets. Bigger marketing budgets meant more hype. And more hype justified the next price increase. Shaq entered this system in 1992 as the first overall pick out of LSU. 7'1", 325 pounds, size 22 feet. And he had a problem right out of the gate. Nike turned him away. Shaq's agent got him to Nike headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon. And Nike's people took one look at his feet and decided the tooling costs were too high. Manufacturing a size 22 shoe required custom molds. The margins didn't work for them at any price point, but Reebok saw an opportunity. Paul Fireman, the CEO of Reebok at the time, flew Shaq in and handed him what Reebok would later call the biggest endorsement deal in their history. 6 years, $15 million. Shaq was 20 years old. The Shaq Attack launched that fall. It featured a pump system in the tongue, a graphite shake plate for stability, and Shaq's own Dunkman heel logo. The retail price was $130. By his second season, Shaq was the 3rd most marketed athlete in the United States, trailing only Michael Jordan and Penny Hardaway. For 6 years, the deal worked. Shaq was selling shoes. Reebok was selling shoes. Everybody was happy, but something was eating at Shaq, and he couldn't shake it. He grew up in Newark, New Jersey, moving between Army bases with his stepfather, an Army sergeant named Philip Harrison. Shaq has said in multiple interviews that he never owned a pair of Jordans growing up. Not because he didn't want them, because he would never ask his father to spend $200 on shoes. "I didn't know I was poor," he said later. "I guess I should have." That background shaped how he saw the business. And in 1998, everything came to a head. By 1998, Reebok was ready to renew. The number on the table was $40 million over 5 years, enough to carry Reebok's basketball business for the next decade. The contracts were drawn up. The handshake was ready. Then a woman approached Shaq after a game. She wasn't looking for an autograph. She cursed him out in the parking lot over the price of his signature shoe. Shaq tried to deflect. He told her he didn't set the prices, the company did. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a wad of cash, and held it out to her. She slapped it out of his hand. You know what? Shaq told himself on the way home. She's right. He went back to Reebok the next day and told them to keep the $40 million. He walked. That decision went against every structural incentive in the endorsement business. Nobody walks away from $40 million. But Shaq wasn't thinking like an athlete anymore. He was thinking like a businessman. The next call he made was not to Foot Locker. He sat down with the CEO of Walmart and asked for one thing: to be the #1 shoe seller in the building. The price point was non-negotiable, $19.99 to $29.99. He brought his Reebok designers with him. The adult line was called the Shaq brand. The kids line kept the Dunkman name. The Walmart shelf became his showroom, and the sneaker industry laughed. Foot Locker didn't even react. Walmart wasn't stealing their customer. The kid who buys a $20 Shaq at Walmart was never going to walk into a Foot Locker and drop $150 on an Iverson question. Shaq understood that before he ever made the call. But here's the genius of the strategy, and this is the part most people miss. Shaq's design directive, as he told Complex magazine in 2014, was simple. Don't embarrass a kid when he goes to school. Make it look as close to the $100 shoe as possible. The Shaq shoe is not charity, it's engineering. The materials are cheaper, the margin is thinner, the silhouette is built to resemble what the premium market is selling that year. When Nike releases a chunky runner, Shaq's team studies the proportions and finds a way to hit the same visual at 1/5 the price. The shoe doesn't need to perform like a $150 Nike. It needs to perform the social function of a $150 Nike. It needs to let a kid walk into school on Monday morning and not feel the thing their parents couldn't afford follow them down the hallway. But here's the twist. Shaq wasn't the only athlete who tried this playbook. In September 2006, Stephon Marbury launched the Starbury at Steve & Barry's. Retail price $14.99, even cheaper than Shaq's floor. The product sold 6 million pairs over 3 years, plus 2 million apparel items. The shoe worked, the retailer didn't. Steve & Barry's had expanded aggressively on cheap mall leases during the 2006 and 2007 real estate boom. When the credit crunch hit in 2008, they filed Chapter 11 in July. Marbury's brand died with the chain. He sued for $2.19 million in unpaid royalties. Marbury bet on a discount mall chain that the credit crunch could close in a single quarter. Shaq bet on Walmart. That distinction is the difference between a failed experiment and a $10 billion empire. By 2016, Footwear News confirmed that Shaq had sold over 120 million pairs of Walmart sneakers since launch. By 2021, Shaq told Sportico that the number had crossed 400 million pairs, and the cumulative lifetime revenue had exceeded $10 billion. Let's put that in perspective. Jordan Brand currently generates roughly $7 billion a year. LeBron James' Nike line has peaked around $340 million annually. Those numbers are enormous, but they measure revenue, not reach. 400 million pairs at $19.99 means 400 million transactions. 400 million times a parent picked up a shoe off a rack, checked the price, and did not put it back down. The margin per pair is a fraction of what Nike captures on a Jordan. The social reach is not. Shaq is the only active superstar of his era who chose this path, and the structural reasons why nobody followed explain more about the sneaker business than any earnings call. Every major endorsement contract contains an exclusivity clause. Once you sign with Nike or Reebok or Adidas, you cannot put your name on a competing shoe. And a $19.99 Walmart sneaker competes with every signature shoe in the building because it eats the bottom of the market those brands depend on. There is also the prestige problem. Once your name is on a $19.99 shoe, you cannot credibly return to a $200 signature. It is a one-way door, and most athletes are not willing to open it, but Shaq was. And that one decision, made in a parking lot by a woman who slapped cash out of his hand, set off a chain of events that would reshape the entire industry. In December 2015, Shaq made a move that looked like financial housekeeping. He sold the rights to manage his name and likeness to a company called Authentic Brands Group, but he didn't take cash. He took equity. He became the second largest shareholder in ABG, behind only BlackRock. ABG was a brand management firm holding licenses to names like Muhammad Ali and Marilyn Monroe. It was not in the sneaker business. It would not stay that way. In August 2021, Authentic Brands Group announced the purchase of Reebok from Adidas for up to $2.5 billion. Adidas had bought Reebok in 2006 for $3.8 billion. They lost roughly $1.3 billion across 15 years of trying to turn it around, and finally cut it loose. The brand that handed Shaq a $15 million deal in 1992 and offered him $40 million in 1998, the brand he walked away from. The brand the sneaker world assumed he had fled to Walmart because he had no better options, was now owned by the company in which Shaq held the second largest equity stake. Let that sink in. The man who walked away from Reebok now owns part of Reebok. On October 12, 2023, Reebok named Shaquille O'Neal president of Reebok basketball. Allen Iverson was named vice president the same day. The guy who built a $10 billion sneaker empire on Walmart shelves was now running the basketball division of the company that once rejected his vision. But here's the thing that makes this story even more remarkable. Shaq's strategy wasn't just about volume. It was about a different way of counting wins. The sneaker industry counts in colorways, in resale multipliers, in limited drops that create artificial scarcity. They celebrate the $200 retro sitting behind glass at Foot Locker. Shaq counted in families who left the store with shoes. The Reebok Shaq Attack launched in 1992 at $130. It went head-to-head on shelves against the Air Jordan 7 the same season. 30 years later, the Jordan Retro sits behind glass in a display case. The Shaq Walmart sneaker sits in the front aisle in your size for less than a tank of gas. One of them counted differently. Here's the business lesson that matters for your career. The premium approach is not the only path to building a billion-dollar business. Sometimes the smarter play is the one nobody else is willing to take because it looks like a step down. Shaq understood something that most athletes never figure out. Your brand is not about what people think of you. It's about what people feel when they interact with your product. And what a parent feels when they buy a $20 sneaker for their kid is not shame, it's relief, it's dignity. It's the ability to say yes instead of no. That emotional connection is worth more than any premium margin. The exclusivity clauses that trap other athletes into the premium system are real, but they're also a choice. Shaq chose to walk away from $40 million because he understood that the long game was bigger than the signing bonus. He traded short-term prestige for long-term access, and he ended up with both. The math at the end of all of this does not resolve the way the sneaker industry wanted it to. Jordan kept the ceiling high, built a brand around exclusivity and aspiration, generates $7 billion a year on margins that depend on the customer believing a shoe is worth $200 before they ever try it on. Shaq took the floor, built a brand around access, moved 400 million pairs across 2 decades at a price point where the customer doesn't have to think about the purchase for more than 10 seconds. The industry only celebrates one of them because the sneaker world counts in colorways and resale multipliers, not in families who left the store with shoes. But here's the thing about the way Shaq counted. It's the same way Walmart counts, the same way the middle class counts, the same way millions of parents who never spent $200 on a pair of sneakers count. In that market, the one the premium brands ignored for 40 years turned out to be worth $10 billion. The shoe is still on the shelf, same price, same mission, and the man who put it there is now running the company that tried to keep him in the premium lane. Sometimes the best business move you can make is to walk away from the deal everyone else wants and take the one nobody else is willing to see.